One day at a school, a girl named Shokum Nishimiya, or Mia, had just transferred to an elementary school. She got a class that was arguably not good for her, because it was in this class that Mia met Shoya Ishida, who was known to be nosy to his other friends. When Mia introduced herself using a notebook that she said was a book for communication, Shoya was surprised that the new kid at his school was a deaf person. At first, everything seemed fine until their school decided to give them 3 minutes of extra lessons every morning. The additional lesson was to learn sign language, which had no other purpose so that they could communicate with Mia. This was met with opposition from Mia's classmate Nayaka Ueno, who was also Shoya's close friend, where Ueno openly rejected the teacher's decision. But a student named Miyoko Sahara responded positively to this decision and agreed to the additional lessons given, and the next day, a moment made Ueno dislike Mia even more. When Ueno was asked to read a text, her teacher warned her because of her lousy reading intonation. But when it was Mia's turn to read, she wasn't even reprimanded. When Shoya was told to read, he imitated Mia's voice, which made Shoya reprimanded by his teacher.
You sound like you're 5. Fine, enough of that.
Start reading from here.
That's good. Shoya.
You gotta be kidding.
That isn't funny. Sit down, Shoya.
Since that incident, Ueno had incited other students to stay away from Mia. When Mia was alone, Shoya tried to approach her. Mia thought Shoya would cheer her up, but instead, Shoya took a handful of sand and threw it at Mia's face, saying, "You're disgusting." Mia's only friend at school was Sahara. They were always seen together. This made Shoya and Ueno intend to hurt Mia's feelings by writing on the blackboard a sentence stating that Sahara had left many of her friends since Mia's presence. Mia entered the classroom and saw the writing. Then Shoya pretended to delete it as if it wasn't his doing. But Mia didn't feel the least bit sad as they expected. And instead, Mia wrote a word of thanks to Shoya.
Oh my gosh! Who would write to erase that for you? So, no need to thank me. Need to thank me.
Since then, Shoya had always bothered and bullied Mia every day. Shoya also often threw away Mia's hearing aids and even took them off forcibly, causing Mia's ears to bleed. When they came home from school, Shoya and his friends were intercepted by Mia alone. But Mia didn't come to repay Shoya for what he did to her, but instead wrote her apology even though she didn't know she had anything wrong with Shoya. After that, Mia hoped that Shoya could be friends with her. However, Shoya refused and threw Mia's communication book into the pool instead. But somehow, Shoya was also the one who took the book from the water pool. The next day in class, Mia did not come to school. Their principal was currently investigating reports from Mia's mother saying that Mia's hearing aids had been lost and damaged 8 times in the last 5 months. He suspected that Mia had been the bullying victim and asked the students to confess. At first, no one dared to confess until their teacher hit the blackboard and told Shoya to stand up in a loud voice. Shoya finally stood up and admitted his mistake, but he said that his other friends also bullied Mia. Even though he was the main character behind Mia's bullying, his other friends didn't accept it. Finally, one class agreed to be hostile to Shoya. Some were even annoyed with him. Meanwhile, at home, Shoya's mother knew about her son's misbehavior at school. She invited him to meet Mia's mother to compensate for the hearing aids that Shoya damaged and lost, which were quite expensive. Before going home, Shoya received a message from his mother that Shoya must be a good person. The next day at school, Shoya accidentally saw Mia cleaning his desk. He then roughly forced her to stop. But as usual, Mia replied with a smile that disgusted Shoya, so he pushed Mia away. Until the peak of Mia's patience ran out, she turned against Shoya. Mia said that all this time, she had always tried to do good to everyone, but for some reason, Shoya repaid her kindness oppositely. Shortly after, their teacher informed them that Mia had moved to another school. After Mia's departure, Shoya finally realized that his classmates were constantly scribbling on his desk every day and were still annoyed with Shoya. Their scribbled sentences were in the form of swear words. It seemed that Shoya was no longer welcome to hang out anywhere. Until many years passed and Shoya had grown up, he then took a course at a school that offered sign language classes. Accidentally, he met a schoolgirl who, if he paid attention to her, was an adult Mia, and it was indeed Mia. Shoya then called her and introduced himself. However, after hearing Shoya's name, Mia immediately fled in fear. Immediately Shoya chased after her and returned the book he had thrown into the pool using the sign language he had learned. Shoya later apologized and expressed his desire to be friends with Mia. The situation had now reversed. It turned out that Shoya had always been haunted by his guilt toward Mia. Even in high school, no one wanted to be friends with him because they knew that Shoya was an outrageous bully. Until Shoya felt lonely in the middle of a crowd of other students, he was more often alone. He also drew crosses to people he didn't want to socialize with, including a student named Miki Kawai, who was also Shoya's elementary school friend. One day Shoya saw two students fighting over bicycles until one of them screamed for help because he was forced to lend his bicycle. Then Shoya approached, intending to lend his bicycle even though, at that time, it was his schedule for sign language lessons, so he went on foot. On the way, he found a promo coupon stub that offered long buns. He got the idea to exchange it and brought the bread to Mia's class as an excuse to meet. Arriving at the class's front door, Shoya was blocked and not allowed to meet Maya by a student named Yuzuru Nishimiya, who looked younger than him. Shoya forcefully postponed his meeting with Mia. In the afternoon, when he was home from the course, Shoya again met his schoolmates, who intended to return Shoya's bicycle. The boy was named Tomohiro Nagatsuka, and since then, they had become good friends. Shoya returned to Mia's class in the same way as before. However, Yuzuru still didn't allow people to enter and meet Mia at any time. Shoya said he was Mia's girlfriend so that no one would bother him. Unfortunately, Shoya seemed to have to postpone his desire to meet Mia again because Yuzuru was holding him back. Luckily, Nagatsuka suddenly came and forced Yuzuru to step aside until a small fight broke out between them. That resulted in Maya finally noticing Shoya's arrival. However, Shoya, who was embarrassed by the commotion, immediately left. Then Mia chased him. In the end, they spent alone on a bridge and communicated using sign language. Then accidentally, Mia's book fell into the water. Mia had to jump into the water to retrieve her book, followed by Shoya.
I'm glad you did.
So, anyway, she can't. I really don't want to read that stuff. Wait, what are you doing? Talk to me, boy!
The incident was then successfully photographed by Yuzuru using the camera she brought. In the evening, Yuzuru shared her shots on social media accounts, making Shoya went viral. The next day, this impacted Shoya, who finally had to get suspended from school. On his first day of suspension, he was asked to pick up his niece, Maria Ishida, at school. Then Maria told Shoya that there were people sleeping in the hallway where the slides were played. Shoya then went inside to see. That person turned out to be Yuzuru. After waking up, Yuzuru told Shoya the truth while apologizing and admitting that she was the one who spread his photo yesterday, so Shoya had to be suspended from school. It was hard to believe because Shoya wasn't angry and invited Yuzuru to his house to eat together. At night, Yuzuru secretly left Shoya's house and walked alone in a drizzle. But Shoya caught up with her using an umbrella to drive her home. On the way, they talked about Mia, and even though it felt weird, Shoya still believed that Yuzuru was Maya's boyfriend. So Shoya said not to bother Mia anymore. In fact, Yuzuru had short hair, making her look like a boy. Arriving at a bridge, they parted ways, and Yuzuru revealed to Shoya through sign language that she was not Mia's boyfriend, but her younger sister. Yuzuru's mother, who was also Mia's, was already waiting for her. Then Mia's mother approached Shoya and slapped him because she was still angry when she saw Shoya's face, especially when she remembered Shoya's previous mischief with her daughter. On the other hand, Mia herself had forgiven Shoya, and she knew Shoya approached her because he sincerely wanted to be friends. They had been spending a lot of time together lately. One day they met their old friend from elementary school, Sahara, who was also Mia's best friend. Then Mia and Sahara were immersed in two grown girls' conversation, which made Shoya uncomfortable, and then he left them. When he was about to cross the street, he met a girl in a cat costume who gave promo coupons to passersby. Shoya paid attention to her, and it turned out that he recognized the girl as Wano from his elementary school. A few days later, Shoya and Nagatsuka went to the shop where Wano worked part-time. But Wano instead hid after realizing Shoya's arrival. When Shoya came home, he met Yuzuru, who was visiting his house. Then Shoya left a cat's head wallet to give to Mia as a gift. Yuzuru then gave the wallet to Mia that night. One morning when Shoya was surprised by Wano's presence, she immediately sat behind his bicycle. Meanwhile, Moya, across the street, was carrying a wallet that Shoya gave her, which Ueno recognized as from the shop where she worked. Ueno approached her about to make her regular lousy habit of snatching Mia's hearing aid and was about to throw it away. But Shoya stopped her and returned the device to Mia and apologized.
Naoka!
Hey there. Somehow I was like that.
Up!
That's
Naoka, what do you think you're doing? I'm so sorry, Shoka.
just friends. That's immense.
Not really.
Well, I'll leave you to your fake friendship thing.
The next day, Mia, who changed her appearance by putting her hair in pigtails, met Shoya. She worked up the courage to talk to Shoya, but since she wasn't used to communicating that way, Shoya suggested using sign language. Before Shoya left, Mia gave something to him as a form of thanks for the present yesterday. After gathering courage, Mia then confessed her heart to Shoya. But this was misunderstood by Shoya, who thought that Mia said Suki, or in Indonesian, it was the moon. Embarrassed and annoyed, Mia left. Switching to Shoya's class, after only interacted moderately, Kawaii finally accepted her friendship with Shoya again with her new appearance. Kawaii said a student named Satoshi Mishiba wanted to be friends with Shoya. With more friends, Shoya planned to go on vacation with them, and of course he invited Mia, who at that time was still a little sulky with him. Maya received a message from Shoya, and it was the holiday when they visited places of entertainment and games. Ueno asked Shoya to buy takoyaki, which turned out to be Shoya's best friend in elementary school, Kazuki Shimada, who left Shoya when he tried to take responsibility for what he did to Mia in the past. This was planned by Ueno, who wanted to reunite them. She wanted both of them to talk again, but it just made Shoya irritated with her. Shoya later confronted her action, and Ueno didn't take that well. Ueno then invited Mia to ride on one of the rides, but before that, Yuzuru left Mia her camera, and the two of them were involved in a conversation. The next day, Yuzuru came to Shoya's house to show the video footage recorded from her camera, where Ueno told Mia that she hated Mia's presence, which she thought had divided her friendship with Shoya in elementary school. Even though Mia sounded apologetic, Ueno refused, and it was seen that Ueno had even attacked Mia.
To the grown-ups. You pretty much ruined everything.
I'm sorry myself.
What did you No intention of being real with me.
What do you think?
He's for Shoko to like.
The next day in class, Shoya and Kawaii argued because of a conversation that discussed Mia in elementary school, so they came back accusing each other. Finally, they tried to resolve the fight outside school hours and gathered to discuss, including Ueno and Sahara, who also came late. Even though they had forgiven each other, misunderstandings reoccurred, which made the group disband, and only Shoya, who sat on the ground and covered his face, had to blame himself again. One night, Yuzuru had a bad dream about his sister, which made her feel that something would happen to Mia. The scene then moves to the funeral of Mia and Yuzuru's grandmother, making them sad, especially Mia. Shoya then tried to comfort them by taking them out so they could forget their sadness. Even though it worked for Yuzuru, it didn't seem to work for Mia, who was now profoundly guilty and thought she was the one who made Shoya shunned by his friends again. Yuzuru and Mia then invited Shoya to prepare their mother's birthday cake, and Mia's mother still looked annoyed with Shoya. But in the end, Shoya was accepted to sit down and ate the birthday cake. Amid the celebration, Yuzuru invited Shoya to come with them to see the fireworks festival tomorrow night, and the next night they came together. When Yuzuru was accompanying her mother to buy snacks, Mia soon said goodbye to Shoya, saying she would study. Even though the fireworks had just started, she left after saying goodbye to Shoya. Yuzuru, who returned with the snacks, then asked Shoya to retrieve her camera, which she had left behind at home. Shoya then went to get it. When Shoya's gaze fell out the window, he was surprised to see Mia ready to jump from the balcony and ended her life because she thought she always brought trouble to others. Luckily, when Mia jumped, Shoya still managed to reach her and exerted all his strength to pull her. Shoya then prayed that if Mia survived, Shoya promised to put himself into society as a better person.
Grab onto the railing! I'll give you one more ounce. Just do this one thing for me. Starting tomorrow, I'll look everyone in the eye. I'll listen when people speak to me. I'll be better.
Even though, in the end, Moya was saved, an incident happened to Shoya. He fell after he managed to pull Mia up. He had to be rushed to the hospital because he fell into a coma. Not long after, Yuzuru came with her mother to visit and, at the same time, apologized to Shoya's mother for what happened due to her daughter's stupid actions. Meanwhile, Ueno was seen beating Mia outside the hospital lobby and didn't stop blaming her for this incident. Maya's mother came and slapped her, but Ueno attacked back and a fight ensued, which was eventually separated by Shoya's mother. A few days later, Mia took the initiative to apologize to her old friends, who were also Shoya's best friends, to improve her relationship by coming to them individually. At night, Mia dreamt of Shoya saying goodbye. That made her wake up, frightened and worried about Shoya's condition. She then slipped and headed towards the bridge to calm down while crying. At the same time, Shoya also woke up and removed the medical devices on his body, then he headed for the bridge where Mia was. They met and apologized to each other. Shoya said that he once thought of killing himself, but now he was against that idea. Shoya asked Mia to stop blaming herself, and he also asked Mia to help him live. Shoya also promised to help Mia escape her life's problems as a friend. Mia agreed. A few days later, Shoya, who was healthy, was then asked by his mother to meet Ueno, who was also waiting for him. He wanted to thank her because Ueno took care of him when he was in a coma. The next day, when Shoya had fully recovered, he planned to attend the festival at his school accompanied by Mia. At first, Shoya didn't dare to look at the people around him. They were even heard talking about Shoya, but Maya tried to cheer him up. Shoya was then allowed to go to the toilet for a while, and there he was approached by Nagatsuka, who had already missed him. In front of the toilet, Shoya was awaited by other friends, including Ueno and Sahara, who attended the festival. Finally, Shoya apologized and thanked them all, while Ueno still didn't change and still hated him. On the festival area's field, Shoya tried to get used to staring at the people around him. He tried to get rid of the X's on everyone he met and succeeded. Seeing all his friends and family, Shoya teared up. Finally, he managed to make amends for all the mistakes he made and tried to redeem himself. Limitations are not a way to end life. Keep trying so that everything goes well. Be yourself and make changes to become a better individual. Thank you to those of you who have watched this video. Please like this video and subscribe. See you in the next video.